Hi there, Chris from TotallyEV, and here we're doing a dedicated audio review of the new MG ZS EV. If you'd like a detailed review of the vehicle itself, do check it up on your pop banner, down in the description below, or indeed in the pinned comments. Now, the model that we have on review is the Trophy Connect that comes fitted with 6 speakers that output up to 150 watts of power. There are mid-bass drivers found within each of the 4 doors and tweeters found on the A-pillars. In the non-trophy variants, you'll have a 4-speaker configuration instead. Now, for you to tinker around with the audio drivers, you've got a 5-band equalizer that can be found on the 10.1-inch infotainment system, which is a great inclusion. In my case, I've added 1 notch to 80 Hz, taken 1 notch off 500 Hz, taken 2 notches off 1 kHz, 2 notches off 5 kHz, and left 16 kHz as standard. Of course, your audio settings might differ from mine, and specifically in terms of your music that you listen to, but I found this resulted in the best sort of audio reproduction. So do share your own EQ settings if you have the MG ZS EV down in the comments section below. Now, in order to connect up to the infotainment system, you have got Bluetooth, where the SBC and AAC codecs are supported only. Now, if you want better quality playback, I would always suggest a USB connection, whereby Android Auto and Apple CarPlay are supported in a wired format, and therefore gives you just a little bit of a higher fidelity audio playback, rather than having to rely on the Bluetooth connectivity. Now, moving swiftly on, we get onto cabin noise. And here at a standstill, using a sound meter, I noted 36 dBA, driving between 20 to 30 miles an hour, 56 to 59 dBA, driving at 40 miles an hour, 62 to 66 dBA, and driving at 70 miles an hour, 72 to 76 dBA. Here I noted a little bit of cabin noise coming in from the tyres and a slight bit of wind deflecting off the A-pillars, although it's pretty minimal. Overall, the cabin noise is okay, although some of its competitors offer a little bit more of a serene interior. What I will note, however, and I did find quite strange, is at the time of review, when the car is on and you have got the climate controls on, you'll hear a slight ticking noise. Here's how it sounds like. Now, I'm not really sure what the cause is behind this, so I really hope that MG will solve it. And it doesn't seem to be an isolated issue, because when looking around the internet, I found some other people on forums also reporting such a problem. So with all of that said and done, let's get onto a sound demo. I'll be placing the camera and microphone in 4 separate locations and playing back a track. The song is going to be from Priya J. It's titled Falling. You can hear it for yourself or indeed purchase it down in the description below in case you're interested. So with the audio demo out of the way, let's get onto my subjective opinion, and kicking things off with the sub-bass response. Here, despite it not having a dedicated subwoofer, the mid-bass drivers found within each of the 4 doors actually do deliver a hearty low-end extension, and it's actually quite surprising. I found myself pretty excited when I was listening back to my music. And of course, it will tail off in the lower echelons of bass and won't deliver that low-end pronounced bass that some people might crave. So if that is something that you're really after, then the MG ZS EV simply doesn't offer it, no matter which trim level you go for. Now, as for the mid-bass itself, it is indeed very hearty and very much in your face. The only thing to note over here is that at louder volumes, I did notice a little bit of uncontrolled bass, and given the door frames are made out of plastic, it meant that the door frames were slightly rattling and vibrating, and therefore took away from the overall accuracy. Nevertheless, it still gave me a very joyous and exciting experience, and one that was definitely, well, left me with a smile on my face. Now, with all of that mid-bass quantity, it's no surprise that the mids are recessed. Now, you might be thinking, well, wait a second, through your EQ, you reduced a few notches through the mid-range, and indeed I did. did. And the reason behind that is because in its default configuration, so therefore at 0 dB, it just didn't feel that accurate. The vocals that I was hearing just sounded a little bit off, and therefore if I boosted it up, it sounded even more off. So it feels like MG has tried to counteract this in terms of their own EQ profile. So in my own experience, I found that reducing the mids by a few notches added to the overall accuracy, while also taking away from the mid-range in terms of being at the foreground. So you just have to accept that the ZS-EV's overall mid-range reproduction is quite V-shaped and therefore warm sounding, and therefore vocals won't come out to the foreground, but will definitely suffice for most consumers. So what about when it comes to its high-end extension? Well, here I was actually left pretty impressed. Even though it's not that impressive at the rear of the cabin, at the front, given you're treated with dedicated tweeters, it means that you're going to be left pretty excited. Now, it should be mentioned over here is that initially I had a few notches added to the 16 kHz band, but I found myself decreasing that to 0 because when I increased the volume of the system, it just became a little bit unbearable and sibilant and harsh at the top end, and therefore gave me some ear fatigue. So bringing it down a few notches, in other words back to its default configuration of 0, meant that I was able to enjoy my favorite tracks and therefore still gave a little bit of life to my tracks. It won't extend as much as more expensive and premium systems out there, but it certainly will suffice. And finally we get onto its soundstage, and here I will say that it's somewhat limited. At the front of the cabin you're treated with only 4 audio drivers, whilst at the rear you've only got 2 audio drivers, and that is of course in the 6-speaker audio system of the ZS-EV. Now here instrument separation is somewhat lackluster, while the overall width and depth is again somewhat closed. It will be perfectly sufficient and will definitely still keep you excited when you're listening back to your favorite tracks or listening to podcasts or let's say the news, but I should say here in comparison to more premium audio systems out there in the market, here the ZS-EV simply can't compete. Now this brings me on to my verdict, and while I've been quite critical about the ZS-EV 6-speaker audio system, I certainly think it will bring a smile to people's face when they sat in it. In comparison to other stock audio systems in terms of the budget end of electric vehicles, the ZS-EV definitely is an exciting audio system, and as a result gets our approved audio award. So we'll be intrigued to hear your thoughts in the comment section below as to what you make of the ZS-EV's 6-speaker audio system, or indeed how you find it compares to the 4-speaker system, and if it's something that you would be actually purchasing as an upgrade, in other words going for the trophy variants instead of the non-trophy variants purely for the audio system. Now, if you've liked this detailed review and want to see more from the channel, definitely do drop a like, subscribe and hit that bell notification if you haven't already. As such, I've been Chris from TotallyEV, and I'll hopefully see you in the next one. Take care of yourselves and goodbye.